want to make you try something that I love and talk about a book that would be a great guide if what I show you interests you. But first, I feel like we need to sort of massage you a bit to sort of make you relaxed and pliable. Most people know the Clint Eastwood movie, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. It's part of a trilogy, the Man with No Name trilogy, that follows this nameless mercenary as he sort of wanders the land, helping people sometimes, but for a price. The first movie in that series is called A Fistful of Dollars. In that movie, this nameless stranger, Clint Eastwood's character, wanders into scene and is drinking from a well while he witnesses a child and his father beaten by a large ruffian. And there's some sort of unusual relationship with a woman who's being kept against her will. As the stranger wanders into town, some men scare away his mule. Nonplussed, the stranger starts a conversation with an old man and learns that there are two rival families in this town warring against each other. Returning to the street, and over his shoulder, the stranger says to the leader of one of these families,
"I don't work cheap."
Then the stranger walks to the men who scared his mule earlier. On the way, he nonchalantly mentions to the undertaker to get 3 coffins ready. The men come out to meet him and more or less say, "You're better off leaving town."
Go get your mule. You let him get away from you?
You see, that's what I want to talk to you about. He's feeling real bad. Of course, if you were to all apologize.
They laugh. One man, though, senses something. Why would this man who's outnumbered present himself this way? Then the stranger says,
I don't think it's nice, you laughing.
And all the color drains out of those men. There's no more joking or laughing. After a brief exchange with a Tin Star sheriff, the stranger heads back down the street. There, he delivers a deadpanned correction to the undertaker.
My mistake. 4 coffins.
The stoic approach towards violence and death. The implicit peril at losing face at such an impossible request. The haggard everyday folk trying to survive the exploitation of criminals is absolutely classic samurai cinema. Now I say samurai because A Fistful of Dollars is actually a remake of this movie, Yojimbo. There's a lot of similarities between samurai movies and westerns. In fact, a few samurai movies have been remade as westerns. Yojimbo itself is inspired by Dashiell Hammett's Red Harvest. Dashiell Hammett is probably best known for his book The Maltese Falcon. He was a writer of hard-boiled detective fiction, but we'll save the discussion about Dashiell Hammett for another time. Many of the tropes used in westerns, especially spaghetti westerns like those of Sergio Leone, are the same tropes that samurai movies use. As a side note, spaghetti westerns are westerns that were filmed in Italy, mostly during the 60s and 70s for cost savings. It turns out that the Italian countryside can closely resemble the American West. That's why you see some of these westerns with like horribly dubbed actors. Those actors are Italian and they could not deliver their lines in English. Yojimbo is a classic samurai movie. Samurai movies include the loner mercenary righting wrongs for the right price. Honorable but desperate men wandering a lawless land. Duels to the death where speed and skill are paramount. Downtrodden and destitute common folk caught up with vicious criminals. Where else can one observe heated sword fights accompanied by cool musings on the nature of existence? Whether played out in nature or immaculate architectural settings, the stories are infused with a worldly wisdom rarely seen in genre entertainment, crediting the audience with a greater intelligence and capacity for conflicting thoughts and emotions that it tends to get from formulaic Hollywood fare. Well, so says Patrick Galloway in his book Stray Dogs and Lone Wolves and its sequel Warring Clans and Flashing Blades. It's a guide to samurai film, a sort of greatest hits and hidden gems. Here is Patrick Galloway's Stray Dogs and Lone Wolves and then Warring Clans, Flashing Blades. The back of each book provides a list of what's covered within it. For Stray Dogs, it's a pretty good list, kind of a good variety, I guess you would say, of films covered. And then your more obscure, maybe not so much obscure, but just kind of left out. Like Ron is not really a very obscure movie for samurai cinema. A lot of fun to read, a lot of fun to open up and just peruse. Kind of almost coffee table-ish in that sense, where you could just like have it out and be like, hey, I just want to read a little entry real quick, or let's see if there's something in here I haven't seen before. So, for my own part, I discovered the genre through Seven Samurai, which I think is how most people do. But I didn't fall in love with it until I saw Shintaro Katsu's Zatoichi. Zatoichi is a blind wanderer who travels the countryside, providing above-the-town massages for income. He likes to drink and gamble. He's a little overweight and bubbles about. Everything you wouldn't expect from a samurai film protagonist. But his walking cane hides a sword, and he always seems to get himself involved in local disputes. If you're in feudal Japan and an evil samurai or ronin has you at the end of your rope, then there's a chance that Zatoichi will be there to catch you when you fall and cut a bunch of bad guys up. There's 25 Zatoichi films, and Stray Dogs and Lone Wolves covers many of them, along with a number of other movies. It isn't meant to be an exhaustive look at these movies or just a review of them, but rather to provide anecdotes and information about the movies and to help guide you through the easily accessible movies to the movies that are a little bit harder to find. And Patrick Galloway continues that conversation in Warring Clans and Flashing Blades, or Warring Clans Flashing Blades. The first book, Stray Dogs and Lone Wolves, written in 2005, actually does go through and tell you how difficult it was to find this or that movie, but it doesn't, a lot has changed. Since then, it's almost 20 years old, I guess. So some of those movies are harder to find, and a lot of them now have been like remastered by Criterion, so they're not too difficult to find. But it does kind of tell you, and I think it still sort of holds up, that if a movie is difficult to find, then it's probably still difficult to find. Warring Clans and Flashing Blades even recommends that you get a region-free DVD player, and I will tell you that that's probably something that I need to get. Here's our table of contents for Stray Dogs and Lone Wolves. You can see that a little bit of time is spent on each entry that's included here, and it's divided in this book into the era of film, so the chronological order, if you will. So all the Zatoichi films aren't together, rather they're grouped by the decade that they were put out in, and that sort of shows you the evolution of the genre. And you flip ahead, and there's some information on the different artists, directors. You get some nice black and white photography of those actors, some stills from the movies that are included, and also some posters. It would be nice if it was able to include larger photographs, but I guess this book isn't really trying to be a picture book. It's not really trying to be a coffee table book. It's not trying to be something that you say, oh, look at this cool, bright picture in the book. It's more about like, oh, here's something from the movie. Here's a photo of this actor that you might recognize, not something to attract the eye per se if you flip to a random page. And of course at the back there's an appendix which kind of helps you if you want to quickly reference something. It gives you a little bit of information, then tells you where it's covered in the book. And a little bit tighter table of contents for Warring Clans Flashing Blades. But in general, it's the same kind of book. You get these little sort of encapsulated reviews or coverage at the very bottom of the book from time to time. And here's a graph explaining the complicated relationships in Samurai Spy. Then you get a glossary of terms and a bibliography and index in the back. Indexes are always nice in a book like this. There's a lot of effort and love here for a genre that I just never can get enough of. And if you're interested in samurai films, this book will help you to find them and enrich your viewing experience. I only discovered these books a few weeks ago, and one reviewer on Amazon said that if you pick up one, you may as well go ahead and get the other because you're going to want it. That's pretty accurate. These books aren't meant to be read cover to cover. It's more of a, you are interested in finding a new movie you haven't seen. So you'll flip to an entry and read it and become intrigued and then seek that movie out and then slowly develop and sort of collect views at least of those movies. Really a cool thing to find. There's a lot of care given to the discussion that Patrick Galloway gives each entry and how he sort of provides you with a lot of background information that I feel like you could get somewhere, but you really have to scrape pretty hard to get some of these details. I think it's a really valuable resource, especially if samurai cinema seems interesting. And I think it really is interesting. If you like Westerns, I think that samurai cinema has something to offer. If you like anime, samurai cinema has something to offer. If you like drama and character studies, samurai cinema has something to offer. It's a beautiful genre of film that rewards you every time you visit it. Right now, I'm reading Shogun by James Clavell. Next, I plan on reading Musashi. Then after that, Rashomon. And then I'm going to reread Kwaidan, which I think that will be fun. Thanksgiving is right over there, and I'm always grateful for the people in my life and the opportunities I've been given. And I'm grateful for the experience I've had this past year on this channel. It has been enlightening and exciting and painful often. A painful lesson in what makes good content. Although every time I say content, I feel like a vengeful ghost rises from its grave. Thank you to Patrick Galloway for making this book that is such a love letter to a genre that I love, and to the directors and actors and studios that made these movies, and not to mention the music associated with them, which is always amazing. And thank you to you for your time and your view. Such a kind thing of you to offer. You might want to watch some of these movies over the holidays, like I certainly will, but I just want to sort of give you a little caution that not all of these movies are safe for kids, so just kind of investigate a little bit before you just pop it in the Blu-ray player, or stream it. Probably you can stream it, whatever, and maybe make a tradition out of it. Normally I would try and do some sort of portmanteau of like samurai and Thanksgiving, but it just does not work for me. So I don't know, just keep your sword sharp and your wits keen. If you want to stick around, I'm going to talk a little bit about the movies that I've seen and make a couple recommendations for someone who's new to the genre. Suggestions first. I'm not going to pull the local news trick of saying something like, "Are you poisoning your children? Story at 10. We're not going to do that. So I could say something like Seven Samurai. That's an easy one to suggest, but I'm actually not suggesting it. And the reason I don't suggest it is because, well, for a modern viewer, it's an older black and white film, which might be difficult. It's already subtitled, which I think maybe some people would have a tough time with. I mean, these are all subtitled, so you'll have to deal with that to some extent. But Seven Samurai is like a exemplary film in its own right. It's considered one of the greatest films ever made, so maybe that shouldn't be your entry point into the genre. I mean, you normally have a salad before your steak dinner, right? So before we get to the main course, an excellent and kind of long movie, Seven Samurai, let's talk about some movies that are a little bit more digestible. So Yojimbo is a good choice. It's very much a Western in that sense, and I think that it doesn't have a very complicated plot. You get a good sort of sense of drama in that movie. Another recommendation might be a Zatoichi film. Fire Festival is a particularly good one. Actually, any of the Zatoichi films should be fine, although the book does suggest something, that you don't watch the first Zatoichi film, that you watch the second one first. The first film isn't very much of a good example for the series, and actually that's pretty correct. I think he goes on to say that that's maybe something you should consider doing for maybe most samurai series, is maybe not be careful watching the very first movie, because it's like the director and the actor are sort of finding their way in that first movie, and it's usually the sequels that are better. I think that's, at least for Zatoichi, that is true. There's definitely like a middle section of Zatoichi that are especially good. I think once you get to like the fifth or sixth movie in, that those are good movies. I'll give you a list, but if I can't, I guess I'll look. Yeah, like Zatoichi on the Road, Fight Zatoichi Fight, The Adventures of Zatoichi, Zatoichi the Outlaw, Zatoichi Goes to the Fire Festival was, I remember, a really good one. And even the book said it was pretty good too. Now there is a more modern Zatoichi. It's just called just Zatoichi by Beat Takahashi. That's a good movie. It's a really great and pretty easy to find movie. I will say if you watch that, you need to understand that that's not very representative of a Zatoichi film. That's sort of like a alternate take on Zatoichi. It's a good movie and it's enjoyable. It is does some strange things at times, but it has a good example of like the humor and the violence that you get in Zatoichi films. But the character that is portrayed, the Zatoichi character portrayed in that film, is not the same kind of Zatoichi in the traditional Zatoichi movies. So you just need to understand that there's a difference between that movie and sort of like the violence and the way Zatoichi acts in that movie as opposed to the original 25 Zatoichi films. But you know what, actually I think it's a really great introduction to samurai films that's pretty accessible for a modern audience. It's going to give you probably what you want to get out of a samurai movie, and is going to be way over the top, is Lone Wolf and Cub. Really fun movies. Very gory, but the gore and the blood is so over the top. The blood is so stark bright and so crazy in its blood sprays that it sort of like detones it a little bit. It's sort of like just crazy. There's some ridiculous stuff in Lone Wolf and Cub. Lone Wolf follows a samurai who used to be in the executioner. And is that correct, or am I thinking about the Americanized version? That's a good question, because I might be confusing this with I think it's Samurai Assassin. There's an American dubbed version, which the title of which I don't remember. That's this movie. It's like the first two Lone Wolf and Cub movies that they smushed together and then they dubbed and they changed the plot and everything. And it's good. It's crazy, but it's a totally different movie than these. So just know that. I think it like takes bits and pieces of like a bunch of the Lone Wolf and Cub movies. But anyways, the Lone Wolf is a sort of a ronin. He's sort of outlaw. He was some sort of a headman, and he was determined that he needed to be executed. And so they attack his household. They kill his wife, but his son lives and he lives. And then this amazing scene to his infant son about whether he will follow his father or go his own way. And so then the Lone Wolf basically is sort of like a hired mercenary, a hired hitman, always including his son along with him. So he's always carrying his son on his back or in a baby carriage. It's crazy and really fun. Great movies. I think that's a really good introduction to samurai films. I think if you are interested, Lone Wolf and Cub is pretty good. It comes from a manga, and the manga is also very good and well received. And I'll probably talk about it soon. And if the over-the-top violence and like constant action isn't exactly your thing, then I might recommend Harakiri. A really amazing drama about seppuku, ritual suicide. Kind of a one of those movies that the ending is so crazy and so dramatic, and you've been built up the whole movie to this ending that when it's done, you just feel like you have all this like stored up energy from this scene, and you just don't know what to do with yourself. Just a wonderful drama. Such a good movie. Definitely worth seeking out. Even if you don't like samurai movies, I think it's a great movie. And then I guess I can recommend a personal favorite, a movie that I wanted to talk about for Halloween, spooky time, but I didn't get a chance, is one of my absolute favorite movies, Quiet On. Quiet On isn't exactly a very strong samurai movie. There's not a lot of samurai type stuff going on, not a lot of sword slashing action. It's a horror movie. It's actually 4 short ghost stories. I am particularly fond of the third one, Hochi the Earless. I absolutely love Quiet on the Movie. It is a very different movie because the whole movie is presented as almost like it isn't a stage play, but they often use backdrops that are like stage play backdrops for a very weird and sort of surreal experience. It's a very slow-paced movie, but it rewards careful watching. So as far as the movies that I've seen most, but not all of Zatoichi movies. Unfortunately, I watched a lot of them sort of out of order, and I don't always remember the ones that I've seen and I haven't. So I know I own the box set, and I really should have seen them all by now. Please, I know, I get it. I mean, I know, but I just haven't, okay? I mean, sometimes when you have something that you love so much, you don't want to just burn through it. You want to savor it. So that's kind of how I am, and I need to stop that because I don't know why I'm saving it. Harakiri, as I said, is an amazing film. Qui-Gon, I also mentioned that one, a film that I truly love. Lone Wolf and Cub, of course. There's 3 or 4 movies. Is it 4? Oh no, there's more than 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Lone Wolf and Cub, there's 6 movies. I've seen them, although I will say that there's a couple, maybe the last 2. I think I was watching them late at night. I might have fallen asleep, but I'll watch those again. Okay. Yojimbo and the sequel, Sanjuro. Hidden Fortress. Hidden Fortress, by the way, is the inspiration for, or at least in part, for the original Star Wars, The Lost Hope. Lost Hope? The original Star Wars movie, The Last Hope. I almost said Lost Hope again. 7 Samurai, of course. Sword of Doom. 3 Outlaw Samurai. Both are great. Throne of Blood is a favorite of mine for samurai film. It's a samurai interpretation of Macbeth. Twilight Samurai. I have not seen Twilight Samurai in a long time. It's kind of hard to find, but I remember it being such an amazing movie. It's a pretty modern movie, too. I think it's early 2000s. Really great movie. Don't ask me why it's not so hard to find. I don't know why it's not being reprinted, but if you can find Twilight Samurai, I recommend it. This is based on a viewing that I did 20 years ago. But it is good. Obviously, the new Zatoichi is pretty good also. Just remember that there's a difference between the new and the old. Ron, which is, I cannot remember what Shakespearean play Ron is off the top of my head, but it's a Shakespearean play made into a samurai film. King Lear, maybe? I just recently, based on this book, watched a movie called Yokai Monsters. It was a little goofy. It's actually really goofy, but it wasn't bad. I think I watched it for free on Tubi or something. Was that right? Oh, I don't remember. Another movie that I've watched that is kind of hard to find, I believe, but is really worth your time is Shinobi no Mano. It's an old black and white movie about ninjas, and it's such a good movie. I mean, that sounds like really cheesy. Normally ninjas are like really cheesy stuff. This is a very realistic approach and sort of view of ninjas. It's an amazing movie. My only complaint I ever had about it is that it was black and white and it needed to be restored, and it wasn't. And so some of the scenes, especially this sort of like fight between 2 ninjas at night, is such a cool scene. And it's so goddamn dark you can hardly see anything because the film needs to be restored. So we can just, cross all our appendages and hope that that's going to happen someday. I've also watched, I'm going to mispronounce this for some reason, Rashomon, the Samurai Trilogy, Samurai Assassin. Ooh, I don't remember how to say this name. This movie, I'm going to put the title. I'm not going to say it. I'm just going to screw up. That one, which was really good. I think it's about the 47 Ronin, which that's something I want to revisit too, but not now. This other movie, I really should have prepared. This other movie, which is sort of like a samurai sort of kaiju movie, it's interesting. I like it. It's really good, actually. Kangemusha, and the Razor movies. The Razor movies are good. They are super sexualized. The Razor movies are really gory, really violent, and super sexualized. So that would be an example of a samurai movie you do not put on with the kids around. Thanks for sticking around. My name is Virgil. This has been Literally Books. Check out Patrick Galloway's Stray Dogs and Lone Wolves. For some reason, these titles are hard to remember. Stray Dogs and Lone Wolves and Warring Clans and Flashing Blades. Nope, there's no and. Warring Clans, Flashing Blades. We'll get it right eventually, right? If I say it enough times. Go check those out. If you're interested in the genre, a great guidebook to enrich your experience, as I said before. have happy holidays if you see it in time. If you don't, the next holiday that comes up, make sure that's a good holiday for you. Go out and watch some samurai movies and have a wonderful experience doing so. Bye.